Hello, hello, and welcome to yet another episode of Dark ShadBros. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a while. I think it's been almost 6 weeks since we did our last episode when we swore that we would not let too much time go by.
I know.
And that pesky little thing called life gets in the way. But here we are. And this is actually auspicious because we realized it was our 1 year anniversary. May 3rd was our first episode of 2024. So this is almost exactly 1 year since we started doing this. And
We have produced 55 and a half hours of content.
and how many episodes?
23.
23 episodes.
This is
So,
23.
okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. But we thank all of you. In fact, a lovely gentleman named Bob Pierce had posted on, I think it was our Jason McGuire Dennis Patrick episode. Are you guys all right? When are you coming back? What's going on? And just so much has been going on personally and professionally that we just couldn't make it work. And so here we are. So here's hoping that we can keep this going now on a more regular basis again. For those of you who don't know me, and there's absolutely no reason in the world why you should, my name is Peter Mack. I've been involved in Dark Shadows fandom for a long time. I might even say too long, but I won't. I just did. Became a fan officially when I was 12 years old, when the show was released on VHS tape. Prior to that, I saw it at age 4 in 1982, and if you do the math, you're dead meat. When it was on NBC in the afternoons, that was my first intro. Then on New Jersey Network, sporadically, used to get preempted a lot for the local news. And then I started going to the conventions, became friends with some of the actors, have been blessed and fortunate enough to work with some of them. I work primarily in musical theater and in cabaret. I've done several off-Broadway shows and national tours. I work primarily as a Judy Garland tribute artist, all live, no lip sync, and as well as a plethora of other famous Golden Age Hollywood divas. And as myself, I do enjoy, contrary to popular belief, I do enjoy wearing pants occasionally. The girdle becomes a real drag, after a while. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm going to turn it over to Michael Panzerato, our other Dark Shad bro.
I'm laughing because when you said if you do the math, you're dead meat. All I could think of was I'll punch your heart out. Ha ha. Anyway, hi, hi, I'm Michael Panzerato, or rather, what's left of him. I'm a little bit tired these days. Missed you guys, love you guys. I'm also an actor. I do most of my work of late seems to be revolving around the late great Jonathan Harris. So if you hit up any of the Lost in Space fan sites at any time, you're liable to see me doing something there, a little skit or two with the robot. But Dark Shadows is probably my second love, television wise. Or I think they're running equal turf actually. But I'm happy to be doing this. I'm in love with it. It's great to come up with all these topics, and there's a never-ending slew or stream of things to talk about in a 5 year show like this. So there's plenty to come, and I'm very excited. And thank you all for tuning in. And now to our third and most captivating member of the thing, the brains behind this whole thing, the Spock, the Scotty, if you will, Dr. GJ Schaefer.
Hello, hello, hello. I am DJ Schaefer. I'm Peter Mack's husband. I'm also a tribute artist, primarily as B. Arthur. We live up in Salem, Massachusetts. From time to time, I will look away from the camera, look at my phone, or I'm going to be looking down at the keyboard. That's because I am looking for your questions and making sure that everything is going smoothly technically. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat window and we will make sure we ask them on air.
Please submit questions and comments. We love that during the show. Please do. And also, if you have not done so yet, hit like and subscribe on the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us build up our viewership and audience. And you can also go and comment there afterwards. We try. Sometimes we drag our feet a little bit, but we try to get around in answering everybody's questions and comments on there as well. But hit like and subscribe on YouTube. That means a lot. And like Dark ShadBros on Facebook. That's important.
And if you want to know when we go live real time, when you near like and subscribe, there's a little bell. If you click on that bell, it will send you a notification every time we go live. So please, please, please do that. All right, turn it back over to my husband.
One of the things that's missing from this episode that I really wanted, and again, life just has been so crazy, is when we first started, if you've watched some of the early episodes, there's clips I think the clips do enhance what we're talking about. And the only problem with that is when we do it, there's usually an initial flag on one of the, is it Facebook or YouTube does that?
It's
YouTube?
YouTube.
So what happens
no,
is
Facebook.
Facebook. So then you'll kind of get thrown off and you got to wait a few minutes to get back in the room. So we're going to start doing that again, but just know once we start showing clips again, it always, because it's for educational purposes, it's okay. But we want to start doing that again because several people have commented they liked when the clips were part of the episode. So we're going to start doing that again. I wish we had them for tonight's episode. And since it is our year anniversary, I do want to mention that the reason this happened was because Michael and I started chatting, God, what is it, 2.5 years ago now?
At least.
Maybe, I think we're going on 3. And then
At least.
and I'd like to do audio because we're getting into a world where we're stuck on these things and clickety clacking away. So I kind of got Michael into doing audio messages so we could go back and forth. And we were leaving each other 20-minute messages about Dark Shadows. And I thought, wait a minute, this is a show. This is, we should be doing this and chatting with the other fans. So that's how it came about. That's how Dark ShadBros was born. And I think the world is better off for it, don't you, Michael?
Yes, a little shit shut. Never hurt anybody.
And catch Michael's independent movie, The Dabbler.
So good.
On YouTube.
Yes, sir.
Check that out.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there
synonym, baby.
There are shades of Dark Shadows in it, so you're going to want to check that out. It's great. It's spooky, a little unnerving, as well. But it's great. So you got to check out The Dabbler. Don't miss it.
Like and comment.
Like and comment.
Even if you don't like and comment.
Exactly. Are you doing anything else like that right now, Michael? Are you working on any more independent stuff?
Two other parts are coming of The Dabbler that I'm trying to work out in my head and on the page, logistically. But 2 other parts of that, and there's something else I'd like to do, of course, involving the supernatural. And so I think I'm working on that now and trying to figure out how I can get that shot. So, and summer is coming, so my filmographer and my music man are coming home, so that'll be lovely.
And the reason that is because the filmographer is your son.
The filmographer is my son's best friend growing up.
That's it.
Nikolai Halderson, brilliant, talented boy.
Very talented.
And my son is the music guy. He looks for the music and all that kind of stuff, and he better. So it's a lovely cooperative effort.
Yeah, check it out, guys. Definitely, you don't want to miss it. Check out The Dabbler on YouTube. And I've been busy doing. Actually, I did a wonderful private gig last week as Judy. I was hired by this lovely couple to come to Connecticut and be a part of their Big 6-0 and Big 7-0 and their anniversary. And they had about 15, 16 friends there, and it was in a beautiful private room. And, yes, you too can have Judy Garland at your birthday, anniversary, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, communion. Or any of the people that I work as. We were doing shows, and unfortunately, I hate to use this word, but I've been told it's perfectly legit. We were victimized by some of the what do we want to call this? The dark shadows that are inhabiting our world. Made someone a lot of money over the holidays. And then decided that our type of show was driving away their family business and kicked us to the curb without, any notice at all.
We had to cancel
which really
the shows.
Sucked. So people have been asking about that as well, and we're actually looking. Several people in the area are trying to find us a new place to do our shows. But I can tell you, we have had more kids than I can count. I was a little boy when Golden Girls was on the air. I was that was 1985, so I was 8 the night the show premiered.
7, you were 7.
7? There you go. And that's the kind of show we do. I mean, we can push the envelope if it's but and make it like if it was on cable. Sometimes our Golden Girls viewers is it was a Netflix show versus network television. And the same with Judy. We've had so many children come and little boys and little girls, and they want pictures with Judy, and it's so. This was really a kick in the gut, but we're working on getting a new venue. We have a team of people that are looking for us, so stay tuned for that. But that really was a kick in the teeth. That's when Laura would say that's when the Angelique in you kind of comes out. When somebody screws you over or cuts you off. These were her words, right, John?
100%.
On my Mac and Chat interview with Laura, we talk about how we all have a little bit of Angelique in us. And she said, Peter, I can be on the Topanga Canyon and someone decides they want to, and I just pull over and I let them, and I just sit there in my car and go, I just hope when you turn the corner, your car plummets into the ravine and bursts into flames and you die a slow, agonizing death. And who would know better than Angelique herself? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Cursed pronouncements.
yeah. Now, interestingly enough, before we get to tonight's topic, this came up on, I forget which Dark Shadows board. Someone asked the question again. It was a question and a statement. They were like, could the show come back? And they also said, I want it back. I really, they said something like to the effect of, I really would like to see it come back because the 91 series got screwed over, which it did. And everyone seemed to be split down the middle about this, but I started going back and forth with the author of the post, and I said, I do believe it could come back if it was in the right hands. If it was put in the right hands and the right people were doing it. I'm not talking about the sequel series that Mark B. Perry is shopping around. I'm talking about a revival of the original show. Interestingly enough, I came across an interview with Dan Curtis on another group from 1971 where he almost prophesied something that I said, where he says to the interviewer, the thing about this show is you can't set it in the present day. Now, it's interesting because the show was in the present day. They would go back and forth. But he goes on to say, like, you need the dark, brooding house in the town that, I'm paraphrasing here now, like in the town that time forgot. And again, that's the trick. If you're going to bring it back, you have to set it back when the show originally aired. There's just way too much technology now and a lack of innocence. It would not work in a 2025 setting. So I'm all for a revival, putting the sequel series aside, if they would set it in 1966. And I mentioned this, I think the guy's name was Mark. I'd have to go back in and try to pull it up. I said, the fans have to realize you can't do a carbon copy. You cannot do a carbon copy because what would be the point? So you've got to give the new writers a chance to say, well, we'll keep the stuff that we know the audience loves, but we got to add some new twists and turns if we're going to do this. But that's my take on it. Michael, I don't know whether you agree or not.
No, well, first of all, it has to be set in the 60s for the like they just found out who Jack the Ripper is. I mean, there'd be no way to get away with it now unless you had some intense, strange supernatural umbrella over it or whatever. So no, it has to be set in the past. I think you mentioned this in the before. Period pieces are all the rage anyway. So every period they would do would be extremely popular for that reason. I think it does have to be in the right hands because we see what can happen, what direction it can take if you don't do that. You can get silly or whatever.
Sure.
And I do. I mean, just by the juice that you have the Mayfair Witches, Interview with a Vampire, the series. You've got all these American Horror Story that actually have elements of Dark Shadows in it, including the cane. I think the time is ripe. I think it paved the way for all of those, and I think it'd be a great time to bring it back.
Yeah. Yeah. Mrs. Maisel was a huge hit. People didn't want that to go off. People wanted another season. Mad Men, which mentioned Dark Shadows, even though it mentioned it negatively. I mean, all of these shows have proven, that they have staying power. And again, it's that naivete. Also, I have to admit, people are going to be shocked. I've never seen. I'm very picky about things. I never, even from my generation, I never saw Beetlejuice. Some people are absolutely shocked by that, but I didn't see it. I just didn't have any interest in it. And now we've had the second movie. I don't want to go down a road of what happened in this person's personal life because I know it's still a thing. The gun and the tragedy on the set. Putting that aside, Alec Baldwin was asked, "Did you see the new movie?" And he said, "My kids dragged me twice to see the new movie." Yet they haven't seen mine. They've only seen clips of my Beetlejuice. And he said something that resonated, which was, here's the difference between the new one and ours. Ours was charming.
Mm-hmm.
The new one is dark and grim. And that's the key ingredient is the former. You need the charm. It's got to have that charm about it. If it's one note dark, and I hate to put Buffy in that, but I've never really saw too much of Buffy, but I think if you go a little too intense, or like the new Fright Night did, if you go down that road, you're headed for trouble. It's got to have that charm to it. So it can be
Yes,
dark.
because you could easily make it Salem's Lot, and then you would lose everything.
Yeah.
You have to
Right.
like Barnabas,
Right.
and you could easily make it into some. So I 1,000 times. I just said I saw a clip of Practical Magic somewhere, and I said I missed the charm of those movies that tended to lean more toward the 90s and 80s than they do now. Everything
Yeah.
is so raw now that it's almost too stark.
Too much.
They're rebooting that. Is it a sequel or is it a reboot of Practical Magic?
I want to say it's a sequel.
Sequel.
It's a
Oh,
sequel of Practical Magic. They're all signed on. Yeah. Yeah. And
oh
again,
wow.
but
Did
there,
not
it's
know that.
even with the '91 series. Now, in the looking back, because it was at the cusp and the tail end, that had a charm to it. Not the total charm that the
Right.
original show had, but let me go look down here. I don't know about Ryan Murphy because I think you're Gary. I think then you're going in the American Horror Story realm.
Right.
And I know from my other half here, he could not watch American Horror Story.
I have a hard time too. It's brutal.
The Kathy Bates
Yeah,
season is the worst. I can't. Ugh.
I didn't see Stranger
yeah.
Things, but I know Amanda Burse, who is in the original Fright Night. She made the comparison with when she went to see the Fright Night redo. She said, I've said this before, guys, so bear with me. She said our movie had layers. Our Fright Night was charming. There's that word again. And lighthearted, and it was scary, but it was also funny. And it had all those components, whereas the remake was one note intense.
Mm.
She cited Stranger Things. She said, I love Stranger Things because whoever it was who did it captured the essence of the 80s. The
100%.
Yeah.
innocence of the 80s. And if you're going to do Dark Shadows, you've got to capture the innocence of the 60s.
It's interesting you
Hmm.
say this because Stranger Things just opened on Broadway, and it's the actual prequel. It's the 60s, how the town came to be, how things got to be stranger. So it's 20 years before the actual series takes
Oh,
place.
Yeah. Yeah. And
oh wow.
it's not they are looking. The studios are looking. It was announced, and now they've got their cast. It's a period piece, albeit not supernatural. But Little House on the Prairie is coming back, and people are up in arms because it's got a huge following. Alison Arngrim, who played Nellie, she's like, I thought for sure by year 51, we would be waning down, and yet she's like, they're asking us for new books and for new this and new that, and we're getting a request to do more appearances. And I'll give that cast credit. Alison Arngrim, Dean Butler, and Melissa Gilbert are all behind it, saying to the fans who are like, no, you're going to ruin it. You got to give it a chance. You at least got to be open-minded enough to let, and no, again, I took this from Allison. If they did a carbon copy of Michael Landon's show, there would be no point. They're actually going back to the roots and starting from scratch, which is my idea for DS. I think you need to go back to the roots and the bare bones and infuse what the people love, but start new. I even said this a few episodes ago to my cohorts here. I wouldn't start with Barnabas. I wouldn't do a rehash of House of Dark Shadows. I would start with Vicky's arrival and the conflict being Laura Collins coming back for David.
Oh yeah.
And the Phoenix storyline, and the very last episode of the first season would be the knock on the door. I'd have the tee up. You know,
Right.
Madam, you may tell her that it's Barnabas Collins. Out.
You know how many people are probably upset with us now? Because I agree with you. But how many people watching this right now are upset saying you have to start with Barnabas?
No, you don't. Because I heard someone say this recently, that that first year gets so pushed aside, and like the tee up. Actually, it was Catherine. It was Catherine Lee Scott who said it always bothered me that that first year got kind of shuttered aside. And there's so much great story there. And the lead up as it gets spookier and spookier till Barnabas finally arrives. I think it's Tubi or whatever it is. They've started, showing from episode 1. So I would do the first season about Laura and Vicky and that conflict and saving David's soul. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
And that the whole juicy Laura Burke Roger, is David really I mean, have a
Yeah,
ball with that these days, whereas you could only maybe
Yeah.
touch on it back then. You could really have a ball with something like that.
yeah, yeah. So
For alone.
that's my idea. Not that the Curtis Estate asked me, but I would start with Laura and then have Barnabas be the cliffhanger, no pun intended, for for the first season, and then let Barnabas take wing, as it were. So, and since we're talking about Barnabas, I thought it would be fun to explore tonight one of the most complex, complicated relationships on the series. And it's been one of the great debates. We were talking about this in the preamble about, when Barney met Julie, or when Barney met Julia, and that's a very complex relationship. And there's a contingency of fans who truly believe that Julia was the woman for Barnabas. Now, I don't want to say it's split down the middle. I think it's split like in 4s and 5s and 6s, all over the place. Everybody has their own idea. And then there are people that say that no woman was good enough for Barnabas, where Barnabas
Oh,
was,
jeez.
Barnabas wasn't good enough for any woman. There's
Right.
there are some real, staunch.
Before we go any further, we have a new viewer, Phil. Hey, Phil. Welcome to our club.
Hello, Phil.
The first season finale could be Willie going into the mausoleum.
Oh, and the hand coming out of the
Ah,
coffin.
That's a perfect.
right.
That's a perfect cliffhanger. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. Why
Yeah,
not?
because there will be people out there who haven't seen the series, a whole generation of people who have no idea what any of this means, and oh, what the hell is he doing? Are you going to find the box of jewels?
Good
One never
point.
knows.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Love
Can't
it.
forget
I
them. Yep.
any variation of that.
Oh, I have to disagree with you, Wave Rider. No, 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 no.
Oh, to get rid of the mistakes with
I
AI.
wish they would clean up the original DS with AI, edit out mistakes, and speed up the pace. No,
Michael, we've talked about this. You know what it is,
that's
Wave
the
Rider?
charm.
It was a play. Dark Shadows was a 5-day-a-week play that had a 48-hour intermission. And
That's a great way to put it.
yeah, well, Michael, we've basically we've said that it was a play. It was filmed on
Hmm.
videotape, and like a play, you never knew what was going to happen. I, I thought recently that if they could have come to a truce, Frid and Curtis, if the show had gone on, maybe they would have. And they did talk about, apparently ABC talked about moving Dark Shadows to nighttime. If it had become a nighttime show, then it probably would have had all of those things that his videotaped movies had, like Dorian Gray and Jekyll and Hyde. There wouldn't have been any bloopers, but it still would have been on videotape. And maybe it would have become a 1 hour a week show versus a daily half-hour program. Then you could have, but to go back now, I just think, yeah, I mean, there are people that get, was Bethia Mapes, the famous in the Tower Room. Someone at MPI actually edited the blooper, and the fans cried out, "How dare you? How dare you remove that? We want the blooper back." So,
So it was that charm that we were just discussing.
yeah,
Charm it is.
Part of part of that was, that was part of the charm of the show, and in some ways it made it more real to me because people do stutter and stammer in real life, and things do fall off the wall, and not every house, it might be a mansion, but it might not have opulent staircases, and so it makes it a little bit more close to home. So I say leave it. And besides that, AI is great, but sometimes I listen to a lot of audio at night when I go to bed at YouTube, and they'll put Vincent Price doing something, and it's not him, and there's always a word or two, like the name Jonathan was actually in one of them, and he said Jonathan, and I was like, oh, AI,
Oh no! Oh no!
Jonathan.
Gary Swafford
So
wants to add, I'm glad there was no Barnabas Julia romance. Their chemistry as friends and psychic investigators is so rich. And the next part is they were the Mulder Scully of their time.
Oh sure.
well, we were talking about where they meant it to be, and was either right for him, and there's always a both end, and my thing is perhaps Julia was cut just for Barnabas,
Mm,
but he didn't get it. He
did not
didn't get
get
it.
it.
It wasn't sinking in, and that's real life too. Sometimes it works like there's a perfect. She's doing everything she can, spinning every plate she can to get him all of the time to be happy and perfect, and he's off looking at the next reincarnation of Josette, or somebody else he can't have.
Yep, 100%.
So
Yeah, and there are a lot of series that will go down that route. It's like um, as a teenager, 90210, it was Jason Priestley and Gabrielle Cateris. I always thought she'd be a good Julia, but that relationship had the same thing where, she so desperately wanted Brandon, but and then when he did finally kiss her, she slapped him because she realized he was only doing it because she was getting serious with this guy. And he all of a sudden kissed her out of nowhere, and she's like, "Really? Now? Now
Right.
all of a
yeah,
sudden you want me?"
yeah.
We have a new viewer, Christine Jeffrey. Hello, Christine. I agree that a Dark
Woo!
Shadows revival series needs to be set in the 60s. I love the beginning shows leading up to Barnabas. I love the Phoenix storyline with Laura. Thanks for your podcast here, Christine from Massachusetts. Hey, Christine. We're in Massachusetts as well. We live in Salem. So, hello, neighbor.
Yeah, that's. And we were saying last night we went for a walk where we're right in the center of it all. You would have loved it, Michael. There was mist and fog all over the place. We went down to the House of Seven Gables. There was one light on in one of the
We were
windows.
in the backyard.
Yeah, and there's the docks. I said to John, I'm like, all we need is Ruby Tate and Maud Browning.
Mist and fog. Oh shit, what was I going to say? It was something about. I was thinking this too, with this whole new generation thing that we were. What would happen with the original is like they would introduce, like Barnabas was only meant to be on for a 14-week stint. Angelique, and the audience would fall in love. God knows what direction the show would take now if you started with Laura. The audience might fall in love with her. She might be the next Barnabas.
Uh,
And Barnabas may take a backseat to somebody, or Patofi might be the new, with the
mm,
things that they're doing now. This is a whole new. You never know what direction the show could take anymore.
Sure,
So
sure.
there's that too.
a different breakout.
you know,
Interesting.
Yeah,
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 hmm
absolutely. New
absolutely.
and brand new characters. New writers might say, well, what about if we bring this person in? You never
I got
know.
a feeling Burke might be huge if they spent a little bit more time on that character. I think that he might be the human in the series. The guy that was more interesting as a human than a monster.
Yeah.
You never know.
I heard
Yeah.
he was huge. Wait for it.
Oh,
Vroom,
oh.
tough room.
um,
Uh,
but you go back to the very beginning when they first meet, and even when they first meet in the old house, and Willie is all nervous that she's there, and I love that she is startled. She's owning it. She's really kind of
Yeah,
looking down her nose at Willie and grilling him. And then when Barnabas comes into the room, you see Grayson jump. And even though he's genteel, he puts her off. And she is kind of flirting with him in a way. I don't think that
yeah,
the attraction is there yet, but she's trying to use her feminine wiles to
both of them.
Yeah, yes. To, to get in that house and find out what she wants to find out, and he's having none of it.
I love the early relationship with them. For one of the main reasons is that the things about her that really irritated him in those first episodes that he was always telling her when it comes down to it, when she offers herself to him, those are the very characteristics that he actually, I think, admires in her, and that's why he won't bite her. Like he says, that crap. Well, he doesn't say that crap, but that might work on men of this century. This assertiveness that you have, or whatever. But I'll have none of it, or this
You're a
this
domineering
this
and meddling woman.
you are, and he tells her pushy at one point when she tries to get him to look at the pictures of the family Bible, and in the beginning he's always telling her, "Oh, you're pushing me a little too much. This is not my thing." But then when she offers him, he says, "But you're a strong-willed woman. You would have no will of your own. You would give that up for me."
Oh,
That whole
willingly, willingly.
feeling, yeah. I mean that the thing that he's getting on her for the most ends up being the thing I think that attracts him to her the most.
And I've said
He
this
seems to like
too.
a forceful woman.
Well, and the flip side, right? It was a forceful woman that put the curse on him.
Mhm.
She
Exactly so.
manipulated him, and
Good
now
point.
you've got the woman that's trying to cure him, and she's also being, she and Angelique have that in common.
Domineering.
They are
Yeah.
domineering,
Hmm.
and not in a bad way, but they
Right.
are feminists in a way that in every good sense of in a sense. I
Yeah.
mean, Angelique took it to some
Right.
dastardly extremes.
We have a new
Right.
view.
Right. But Julia, I've said it before, she was the ballsiest character on the show.
We have a new viewer, Grumpy Old Bob 56. Great name, Grump.
Hello.
They could. I understand what he's saying. They could AI episode 1219, and the black and white kinescope episodes would look a lot better if they were vid fired. I do think that there's a conversation to be had around the kinescopes about up pixelizing them so that they're higher quality. I'd be open to that. And interesting about 1219, the infamous missing.
Well, and grumpy old Bob, I've said too. Once it's perfected, once they would perfect AI, which I have no doubt that they will at some point, as Michael pointed out, you don't want them to say Jonathan or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Jonathan.
but if they get it right, if they perfect it, and all of the estates would agree, they could take all the voices from the old show, and we could have a whole, you know, year 5.5, year 6, or even just a wrap up where they could get Joan's voice and everybody and do another drama, but using the actual voices from the time. If once they get it right, I would like to see that.
Yeah. Hmm. Be cool. I know with the Star Trek series, the original, they went back and where they used models for the original Enterprise and all of the Klingon ships and all that, they went back and replaced all of that with enhanced looks. With the ships, it to me it did not work. I prefer to see the models. But when they went to like Vulcan and they showed the planet, the
Yeah,
landscape of the planet, oh, it was beautiful. It was
yeah,
great. It was beautifully done. So it can go either way as long as, like you said, they remember to stick to what people love about it and not rape us of what we love. Then I'm all for it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, as the Little House cast is pointing out, it's not us. We're too old to play those roles
Yeah.
anymore. You've got to be open to new people coming in. Allison Arngrim said, "My heart breaks for the kid that just got cast as Laura because
the
there goes,
comparisons.
oh, she's not Melissa Gilbert. No, she's not. She's a new little actress. You got to be cool with that.
Yeah.
So,
Give her a break.
Okay, so a few comments here. I have to put this one up. So, Phil, you don't know this, but we called Laura Parker, we called her our West Coast mom. We were very, very close. She would get a kick out of this. Angelique was a dominatrix in a
oh,
way.
she'd love it.
She would get such a kick out of that.
She would love it.
And then also, Bob Pierce says Miss Finley would have made a great character if she was on the show more. And then, of course, here it is. Gary Swafford says, "You said Joan's voice, Peter. You know what you must do now. Do Miss Finley."
You asked for it.
Madam Finley, what's wrong? Why don't you answer me? Oh, we love you, Joni. We love you, Joni. That voice that we say was like it was coated with Godiva chocolate. The vocal cords were covered with Godiva chocolate, syrup. It was so delicious. Her voice was delicious. But I think that's one of the things that pissed him off about Julia was he was pushing her around the same way Angelique was pushing him around back in 1795. So, and then what's hysterical is, he's always going for the throat. And I love the one episode where she goes, they cut to a commercial and they come back and she's like, is it necessary for you to constantly try to attack me?
Those are the inkwell hair and the inkwell moments, I call it.
Yeah.
When they get snippy with each other, and it's like they have a crush, like the anyone but you,
Anyone but
or
you. Oh,
what is it? Bitter pill to swallow. Those
that's
moments.
classic Julia.
My
Classic Julia.
all-time favorite is when he rips the flowers out of her hand after she got all over Vicky, and she bought her flowers, and Vicky leaves the room, and he comes up behind her and takes them out of it, like, give me that, and throws them down in her head.
Yeah, it's a
Those are the
good moment.
moments.
They have, I
Oh,
mean, they're the chemistry. And again, but I'll say this, I'll make the Little House comparison because they just, it was Allison who said it.
Mm-hmm.
The casting director cast so well, the chemistry between all the actors. And that's another thing with a new DS. If
absolutely.
the chemistry is crucial, you've got to have theater actors who have such good chemistry with each other, and it'll work.
I'll tell you another thing about Barnabas and Julia, and I can't decide if it's the screen time because they shared the most screen time,
Yeah.
or each of their looks, but they have the best stills together. The
Yes.
pictures of Barnabas and their stills are the best. I don't know what it is they capture in every still, the two of them. It just even when there's ones where he's vampiric, they're just publicity shots, and there's one where he's got her in the crook of the cane and she's behind him like that, and or when they're just chatting, their stills are the best.
Yeah,
You know,
those are great. Those are great. And
yeah.
and by the way, this came up too, just about Grayson, guys. Her hair came up. There was a picture of her with her little football helmet when she's trying to help Vicky recount 1795. That was her wig, and she actually auditioned with her pixie hair that you see later on. But it was they asked her specifically, "Do you have any wigs, or do you mind?" And she said, "Well, no, I have tons of wigs," which was the in thing at the time. My grandmother,
Mm.
my mom, my godmother, they had falls, they had
A
pieces, they had all
fall,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, so that actually came out of Grayson's closet, and it was Dan Curtis's wife
Interesting.
during a party in the 1795 period. She said, "Why are you wearing that horrible wig?" And it was something like, because your husband said I had to. So that's why they gave her the haircut. That's how that came about. That actually came from her closet. That was her own personal wig that she had. It was very popular at the time.
I didn't know that. That's wild.
Yeah.
We have a new viewer, Kevin Watson. I think what hurt the show down the stretch, Barnabas, the loss of Barnabas, especially in the 1840 storyline, he is hardly on till the end of that storyline. What are your thoughts?
It's funny. That's a storyline I need to go back and watch. I watched the Cliff Notes version on Dark Shadows Fans Unite about a year ago. I need to go back because we have an episode coming up where we're going to be talking about our favorite writers and our favorite episodes to see if they're like all written by the same person. So I really need to watch 1840 in depth again from start to finish because I forgot. You're right. He is gone. Go ahead, Michael.
You said this before, Peter, and I couldn't agree with you more. I love David Selby and I love Quentin Collins and all of that, but when Barnabas is missing for too long, I don't know if it's because he provides such an impetus to everything in the show. He's sort of like the show prophet, running around trying to get this done and get that done and get this done. And but when he's missing too long, it does lose something. It does, like when he's chained in that coffin for fucking ever in the interview with the vampire sequence.
Yeah.
It's painful after a while. It's like, okay, we get it. They're horrible human beings. Where is Barnabas? It's so I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah, yeah. When he's and the same for Grayson. I mean, because they became
Oh yeah.
they really became I think Barnabas and Julia and Professor Stokes and Angelique. If they're
Hmm.
gone too long, it's just that they became a really good backbone of the show. So,
Yeah.
and funny enough, Sam wanted to kill Grayson off when they got near year five, and he went to Dan and said, the problem here is, and this is inherent in soap operas, maybe not they don't have vampires, but she's the only one who knows the secret. So if we kill Julia off and bring in someone else, and you have a new person learning the secret all over again, and Dan would hear none of it. So 3 cheers for Dan on that, because I can't imagine Dark Shadows without Julia Hoffman.
Hell no.
No,
Hell no. She's the one really interesting human being, other than
yeah.
Professor Stokes,
Nick
on
mentions
the
about the
show.
cruelty. Yes, yeah. You mean very little to me, Doctor. Very little.
Oh yeah.
I think Nick, I mean, God, he's cruel to Willie too. I always chalk this up to the PTSD. You got a very angry individual here, and he's taking it out on everybody. And it's always the people that want to help you. Even Willie is trying to help him. He's always trying to talk him off a cliff with Burke, with this one, with David. And it's the same thing with Julia.
He
It's almost
addresses that with her in the Never Without You. He tells her, "I've done so many things to you." When she's like, "Oh, don't forgive me or don't trust me or what," he said, "After everything I've done to you," or whatever he says to her. And I agree with you. I don't. You've got to do the timeline, man. He had that countdown, had everybody wiped out, and then was instantly placed into a coffin for 200 years. Like no processing time, no just wall Trask up. Oh shit, I'm still alive, and that whole thing. I'm supposed to be dead. Where did Dad go? What happened here?
yeah,
It was way too long to fester without having some ramification.
absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely he's cruel to Maggie, but even there too, like he could have wiped Maggie out in a heartbeat, and yet that's his conscience letting her linger in that cell. Because I think in the
Yeah.
end, if Sarah hadn't remembered or realized that there was a secret passage there, she would have done the same thing she did with Dr. Hoffman. She would have swept into the room, and she would not have allowed him to kill Maggie.
Well, and what he was trying to do to Maggie, evidence of a not of a mind not where it should be. That even with all of his power, he was actually trying to usurp her consciousness for another kind of brainwashing on a whole nother level. It shows that he wasn't, you know, firing on all thrusters. you know,
And the conscience part was also taking over, because why didn't he just bleed her dry the
Right.
first night?
right,
Right.
All he had to do
right.
was turn her into a vampire, and that would have been it. It's that thing of grappling with,
She must
I
come to me willingly.
yeah, yeah.
We have a
Yeah.
question from Angel Heart Collins. What number does the 1840 plotline begin? It is season. It's episode 1191. I just googled it.
And on Amazon they have them as seasons. Yeah, they
Season 5.
season 5. So yeah, that's what you want to look for, Angel Heart. I think also we see that stuff in 1967 where she clearly, and even Carolyn puts him in his place.
Mark Smith says, "I liked it
Hmm.
when Julia slapped Cassandra."
Oh yeah. Oh, that's that
Julia went toe to
classic.
toe with all of them.
And just the way she gets up nonchalantly, matter of factly, whacks her. You're going to be sorry that you did that. And
It sounds just like her too. That's
and
so
she
true.
just she just kind of goes. She walks off. I noticed she walks off like Alf. I'm a huge Alf fan, and I've noticed
Right,
sometimes the way Julia goes out of a room, she kind of walks out of the room like Alf. The shoulders go a little bit.
Madam.
She's yeah.
Like reminds me of Madam a little bit.
She struts out of the room. That's one of my favorite moments, Mark. I love that moment. Um, Yeah, I
And
mean, he.
those two kind of gained respect for each other after that. I mean, Angelique, in her own way, respected Julia. And I think, kind of, in moments, Julia started to understand Angelique a little bit better, too. I
I,
think, having experienced Barnabas at his best and worst.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's if we had had the clips. What I wanted to show was when they meet in 1897, and Julia's coming
Yeah.
in to give him the shots, and she says to her, you'll find that trying to help Barnabas Collins is a fruitless and, he's a cold, callous man. And without missing a beat, she looks Angelique in the eye and says, "Who made him that way?" And and she gives her a look like, "Ooh!" It's like, honey, she just, damn, you
But
know.
you know what's so cool about that is she was like, okay, and I hate to pick on her all the time, but I'm gonna. Josette didn't have that in her. And it's funny to think that that like Barnabas had like a lusty relationship with Angelique, and we don't know the full circumstance, but it was lusty and passionate, and it obviously didn't leave right away because even when Josette was on the way, he still had, shared a kiss and all that kind of thing. You don't know if Angelique maybe put the juju on him or what, but there was something passionate there.
Yeah,
A hard-headed woman. He really respected Julia. He had something strong about Julia. Roxanne was no waif either. And yet Josette was so wispy and so hi that I think that in time she would have irritated him. I think she wouldn't have made him happy in the end anyway. I think, I think she was just what he always wanted what he could not have. It was always something out of reach with Barnabas.
yeah, yeah. And again, the Josette that the writers started in 1966 was not the Josette that we get in 1795. But I truly believe that was when Elizabeth says to Vicky in the black and white episodes, I'm going to let you help Miss Hoffman with the research, and it's going to be very detached, and it's going to become a reality, killing your dream. Has anyone ever thanked anyone for the death of a dream? And that's the tee up to the time warp, because Vicky learns never meet your heroes. Just by being there, she's upset the apple cart.
Right.
Whereas in the new series, I loved that Josette and Vicky, that Josette was the Josette that the original writers intended.
Got it.
Right. Yeah, I
She's
agree with you 100%. I never noticed it until you said something,
she's
but I
spunky.
agree.
She's
Hmm.
very spunky, and also she's a little bit of a tart because I don't think he didn't get to third base, but she at least let him get to second base.
Hmm.
We have a new
Hmm.
viewer.
That scene out on the lawn. I'm sorry, hold that thought, with Ben and Joanna. I mean, it's getting
In the
hot and
picture
heavy
op.
out. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Terry Cordes writes, from a physical aspect, Julia and Barnabas are a match. Oh, this goes to your point about them being photogenic. Um,
Hmm.
with their chiseled cheekbones, she reminds me of a female Barnabas. A softer face wouldn't have worked. Both are gorgeous. Great point, Terry.
Bingo. I'm with you 100%. They do
Phil
look like brother and sister.
They
Phil
could be
asks, did
related. Yeah.
Angelique truly love Barnabas or did she just want to conquer him? She truly loved him. We have talked in depth with Lamar about that
Yeah.
very point.
I'm definitely
Peter disagrees.
infatuation.
Oh,
See,
Peter.
Infatuation. I
I
don't.
think
When
that
did
his
he
gave
ever
her something
promise
she'd never
her?
seen before. I think being a servant, and from what I've heard from, like, let's say that the two connect, from Angelique's descent, her father was a terrible human being. I think that I don't think it was his fault necessarily, but him showing her gentleness and being romantic with her was probably the first guy who ever showed it, first gentleman, probably, who ever showed a romantic interest in her, and she fell in love with that. Now, whether that's who Barnabas actually was, who she was in love with, may well indeed not have been who he was, but I think she did feel something genuinely strong. Uh, Betrayed, scorned.
Very much so. Very much so. And then there's the kind of juxtaposition in '67 when Julia they're about to send David off to the funny farm, and she says, "The boy's not lying. I've seen Sarah." And she really
Yeah.
is kind of turning on Barnabas, because if that seance goes the way he thinks it's going to go, and it was all her idea. Seance is all Julia's idea.
Yeah.
That's it. He's going to be a dead duck.
Yeah. They were very equally matched, intelligence wise and skill. Like she didn't have powers, but she kept up with him
Because
very well.
when they come back, and he really is pooping down his leg, and she walks in and she's like, "You're always in such control of everything. It's kind of fun to see how you react when you're not." And she turns on her heel and walks
What
out of the
about when
room.
they when all is said and done and she's got her hair cut and he did a lot of great physical stuff and he spins and gets down on his knee and he's holding his cane after that, before that or after, he tells her her hair looks good, and I thought that's rather random, and she says, "You're complimenting me, Barnabas. What do you want?"
You must want something. Yes, that's
Right, that is
another
great.
clip we would have shown tonight. Yeah, you know,
Uh.
because he wants to know what Vicky has said to her, and she's like, "I'm not going to tell you." Well, then you're putting her
Mm-hmm.
life in danger, and she's like, "That is blackmail, Barnabas." And
She was tough.
that's when they kind of start to. I think that's when that relationship does, because she doesn't rat him out.
Right.
She could rat
Well,
him
what
out.
later on, is it during the Adam plot? When is it that they lose her? I can't remember if it's with Adam or if it's with when the Jennings vampire. They can't find her, and Barnabas and Willie come back, and Willie says to him, "Come on, Barnabas, you're talking about everybody but the one person that really matters, the one person you actually care about."
Great
And
scene.
Barnabas is fighting a little bit, and he says, "Willie, what do you want me to say, Willie?" It's one of those
That I
that
care
he
for her,
confesses that
and he does say
yeah,
that he cares about her.
yeah. That's like the first that really is when it crosses the threshold between what the hell's going on here.
It is Adam.
It's
Doesn't Adam get her? I want to
is
say,
it Adam? I couldn't remember
guys,
if it's Adam
correct
or
us.
Tom Jennings.
Correct us if it's, I don't know if it's Tom or if it's. And then when she first meets Tom the vampire, I
Ah!
oh yeah, and it's creepy. It's creepy because it
Right.
comes out, and I wish Don was alive, because I always wanted to know if Elvis the vampire,
Right.
the way that lip, that lip wheel. Thank you very much.
Oh,
And you don't see Julia. She's like, I know what you are. Yeah,
They find her on the ground completely kept.
prop
She's just laying on the ground. It was like
propped
when
up.
Angela Channing fell on Falcon Crest when Jane Wyman fell. She was perfectly straight. Everything was where it should be.
Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm.
And Julia, I mean, Julia's, I think, loving it. I always wondered if that was Grayson's idea, because, first of all, this is a May December undead romance,
Yeah.
because he's about 22 years old, 23 years old, and she's
Cougar.
yeah,
Hmm.
yes, she's the cougar. And it's kind of fun to see, like, she wants this, is he's giving her everything that Barnabas wouldn't.
And Barnabas gets a little. I mean, when he rips the scarf off her, how long did you think you would fool me of all people? There's a little
Yeah,
tension there for a moment or two.
yeah, yeah. So you wonder where Barnabas's feelings were really at, because
Hmm.
there is a kind of subject, which Jonathan played that kind of subtext beautifully. There's this jealousy thing going on in there. I mean, he obviously doesn't want to see her turn into a vampire.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've mentioned something before, and I keep thinking as I'm looking through all these scenes and I'm writing down all these, taking little notes about the whole thing. I think one of the gems of this relationship, and one that I'd hate to see changed if they do move forward with a new series or even a sequel. Their relationship appealed to a group of people. Um, you mentioned about the gay and the female best friend. Uh,
Yeah.
sometimes There's a derogatory term I've heard Elton John use a few times to describe the relation. The second word is hag. The first
Yeah,
word is
we'll
mother.
say we now we say flame dame, flame dame, flame dame.
Flame Dame. I would hate for them to take that from people. I think there's a group of people that kind of need that, and I don't want to see them take that away from them because there is something about that relationship that should be left preserved for that group of people. I think
Ag-
that's what I think personally.
On the nose, on the
Perfect
nose.
observation.
Yeah, and also because too, she is that, like a gay man or a queer man, however you identify, that you have that girl in your life that wants you, and you know you can't, or even if you're bisexual and you go, but I can't. If I sleep with her, it's going to change
The
our
dynamic.
relationship because, yeah, I could take you. Yeah, any one of us could take anyone to bed, but then if you don't feel the same way in the morning, it's going to screw everything up.
100%.
And we've talked about that vampirism is that exchange exactly, is that kind of an intimate exchange. So, I mean, you know, I think it should be as is Julia and Barnabas.
Yeah, so that's great. That's great. I love that. I love the S and the T's.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
secret.
His head nod too. I always like he did that.
His little S. Never without you, Julia.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene. Oh my God. I want to bring this up to all who are listening. To the Julia and Barnabas, if you go onto YouTube, someone has dedicated an entire channel to just Julia and Barnabas scenes, and they have a song on each video. One of them was that old song. Oh my God, it's just a phase. Do you remember that old song, Just a Phase? Just a silly phase from the '70s.
I don't know
It's
it.
one of them is those. I was looking at it. I was in tears laughing because I thought a whole channel just of Julia Barnabas and music. It was really you got to look it up.
I'll totally look it up. I will totally look it up. Well, there's so much. There's so many Grayson. They did the
Yeah,
Grayson Hall explaining quarantine in 5 minutes, and it's all of her being trapped in the
screaming,
rooms.
screaming for 5 minutes.
But it
Mm-mm-mm.
was again, it was charming. I mean, Sam Hall, her husband. I mean, he kind of poked fun at her when he said, "I tried never to end an act with Grayson because if you had them coming in and Barnabas saying, if she were to say, did you kill him?" And Barnabas would say, no, I missed the bullet. You'd cut to Grayson and she would turn into Lillian Gish in Birth of a Nation. Yeah, yeah, So, but again, that was part of her charm. That was part of her charm.
Well, I'd say Sam Hall said something. I thought it was great that he said it and he cleared it up. He said, a lot of people felt sorry for Grayson because they felt that they were mocking, that maybe it made her feel ugly. He said, but Grayson loved playing the unrequited love. She really enjoyed
Yeah,
that. Any skin off her nose to do this. So don't feel sorry for for Julia.
and that
She
was
was
her
enjoying it.
subtext. It's funny how Jonathan came up with, okay, he's like an alcoholic. He doesn't want to be
Mm.
this way. He just doesn't know how to get rid of the addiction. She comes in and she starts giving him these looks, and they're going, "Do you see what's going on here? There's this unrequited love thing going on here. So no, we're not going to let Barnabas drop her in the vat of acid, which, guys, is how she was supposed to die." Joe Caldwell said, "I had it mapped out," and there's references where he says to her, you know, "When I do away with you, you'll vanish without a trace. There'll be no trace," because she was supposed to be upended into a vat of acid in the old
He's
house.
dropping that ice cube into the cubes into the vat, isn't he? While he's talking to her, like,
Yep.
oh, shitty. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's hard to watch in House of Dark Shadows. I do not. I usually fast forward past the scene when he kills her. That's a hard watch as a fan
Mm.
of the show.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't like that, at all. We're used to him beating Willie.
Phil asked the question: did Julia eventually lose her romantic interest in Barnabas after their friendship developed?
No.
No.
No way.
No, and I'm
No
trying
way.
to get. Yeah, I'm trying to take us down that
Oh, I'm
trajectory.
sorry.
No. That's okay. No, perfectly valid question. It's just, let's see. So we've talked about Tom, and Adam, and Barnabas trying to protect her. And then 1970 parallel time where she manages to cross over, and she doesn't want Barnabas to go back and save Vicky, that little
Oh
sojourn,
yeah.
when he finds out that she might die on the gallows and he transports himself back. She's against that. And again, that wonderful scene between her and Willie where she says, "I'll take care of you," because that's what he would have wanted. When they think
Oh
Barnabas
yeah.
is dead.
He's dead.
That's after the, I'm sorry, that's after
Yeah.
the dream curse. That's after the dream curse thing. You'll come work for me at Wincliffe and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, what about when they? I thought about this too. When the whole vampire v zombie, where he takes on a wave of zombies and tells her, "Run, run, Julia, get out of here, run, get to the stairs," that kind of thing. I mean, he protected her a lot too, as much as he could.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how she gets zapped back into 1840. Right. Exactly. But in parallel, and I love when you have, Hoffman and Julia and that great,
Ben,
and that great
Bedhead
close up.
Hoffman,
Yeah. She's got the poker in her hands.
the poker,
And
sidebar, Bedhead Hoffman.
the pretty great Patty Duke thing they did where you've got Hoffman going and falling to the floor.
Yeah.
And
So
again,
they were always
Barnabas,
doing twins on on Lost in Space. So I love that stuff when you have an evil
oh, it's
twin and all that kind of thing.
great. It's great. It's
Yeah.
great. When Barnabas wakes up and realizes, and he's like, you did that for me. And she's like, you would have done the same thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have an off-camera question. Do we know how close Fred and Hall were in real life? Anyone else recall his remarks about her in a late life interview that he did with Jim Pearson?
He was kind of old, and wasn't he starting to deal with dementia then? He was kind
Yeah.
of cranky in that
Yeah.
interview. I wouldn't take that to heart. I don't think that was him at his best. I think
No.
they probably grinded on each other's nerves, but that's how it is when you work with somebody all the time.
Yeah. You're a family. You're going to get on each other's nerves. I think that he said when she passed away and he was asked for a quote, he said, I think to the New York Times, "She saved me so many times," meaning as a partner,
A scene partner?
as a
Mm,
scene partner.
scene partner,
And
yeah.
so I think he did have a soft spot for her. Grayson could be very terse. She made some unsavory remarks about Jonathan. One on a fan tape where he had done what's the Shelley Winters movie? He plays her mute butler.
Oh, right.
Not to. It's
Not the Devil's Daughter. That's not it. It's something like that. Anyway, he plays her
I was,
mute butler.
yeah, what the hell's the name
yeah.
of that movie?
Google it.
I'm gonna Google it. With it.
And they say to the girls interviewing her say, he has no lines, and she says, "Good, good. He shouldn't because he can't remember any of them."
Right.
So that's
She
how
was
great.
rough.
Yeah, that's how Grayson could
Devil.
be.
It was the Devil's Daughter.
The Devil's Daughter.
I got it right.
It
Okay.
was the Devil's Daughter. Yeah.
But no,
Um.
at conventions, I heard him speak very eloquently about Grayson. He made fun of her eyelashes. He said she had these false eyelashes that were, they were like spiders. I don't know where she bought them. He made some kind of off-color remark about her false
Right.
eyelashes. But I think for the most part, it was like a brother-sister relationship. I think.
There was no Shatner and Takei there. It was
No.
a lot of love and yeah. No Harrison Lockhart.
Right.
And R.J. Jamison pointed out there might have been a little bit of in the early '70s. What's the word? Oh, not ill will for lack of because Jonathan refused to do the second movie, and
Oh, right.
and that's Sam, and you've got that's part of the food chain, and so losing out on that money in a sense. And the
Sure.
movie didn't do well, didn't do that great, obviously. So I think there might have been a little bit of resentment in the early '70s because of his refusal to do the second film. I think, but
Understandably so.
yeah, yeah. So, but that's Mr. Curtis cutting off his nose to spite his face because Jonathan never said, "I don't want to play Barnabas Collins anymore." He said, "I don't want to play the movie version of Barnabas Collins. Two totally different things.
Yeah.
Okay, I accept your resignation. That
Yeah.
isn't what I said.
That's not what I said. I didn't come in here for you to fire me, Dan.
She was a little rough with Miss Parker too, wasn't she?
Oh yeah,
I don't know that but she was rough with her. I remember
On that
hearing that.
tape, on that fan tape. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, really?
She. Well, they had become friends by that point. But again, Laura said, she came from that generation of women like Lucille Ball. Whatever was up here came right out here. There was no censor in between.
Right.
She said there's a generation of women. Laura put her own mother in there, and whatever she thought, she said.
Yeah. My
And
grandmother among them.
my grandma too. My grandma was the
I don't like your
same way.
shoes. I don't like your shoes.
Yeah,
Cut your hair.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, she was
Yeah.
she was very icy because she had an actress friend she was pushing for Angelique, and so when Laura got the part, she was not happy at all. But
I can't even imagine
did you?
another person at the helm of
No,
that
and
character.
not in that version of the show. Absolutely not. No, they were all perfectly
Hmm.
cast.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
we get through parallel time, and of course there's the whole Roxanne thing, and your favorite, and it's one of ours, Michael too. That them the room changing, and Barnabas being so forlorn. This girl that he's known for what 3 days.
Right. Once again. I mean, how well could he have known Josette, really?
Right? And Julia, she's like, you're not the only one
Yeah.
that's had to live a life without love, and then that great. How does she put it? I know that the clincher is we learn to live with it. We can learn to live with anything if we
Anything.
have to. And she looks at him. They do an extreme close up of those big cow eyes, and he realizes she's saying, I'll take you. I want you. I'll take you.
They have an interesting moment which I think is so odd. And I mean, I get it. A character can't be pure, deep-dyed, snarling villain or it's dull. But in House of Dark Shadows, it's so different from the series when she realizes that she is in love with him. He looks at her and says, "Oh, Julia, I had no idea." And that's a sense of tenderness you don't see from him very often in that movie. That's not a side of Barnabas that is explored much at all. And I find it so oddly placed in this movie, considering he strangles her a few scenes later, when in the series he didn't give her that pity. He was much rougher on her. Like
Yeah,
you said, I feel very little for you, or whatever the
you
line
mean
was.
very
So
little.
it's
Yeah, you mean very little to me.
yeah, oddly placed in the movie, but that's the same thing. She doesn't let on. He
Yeah,
realizes it from her look, and he's not a monster. That thing. So
that's yeah. I love that scene between her and Thayer. Yeah.
yeah,
I guess because they couldn't, once he turns into the old man, she's going to get knocked off, so they couldn't have that exchange
right,
they had on the series.
yeah,
Where, yet again, I mean, that you really see the look on his face where he goes, "This chick really does care for me. There's feelings here."
yeah,
And then a few episodes later, when he's playing her, and talk about cruelty, Nick, if you're still watching, and Carolyn's like, that was horrible. She loves
yeah.
you.
Kisses her hand and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, yeah. He's rough. He's rough.
Well, but the first
And
time he ever
my
says her name is as the old man. He goes, "You would do that for me, Julia?" And she's like, "That's the first time you've ever called me by that name."
that's it. Where he says, "You would give all that up for me." You know. Then after that is followed by my favorite line: "Touch it, it's my birthday." Oh, I mean, no, touch it. Isn't it rough? Does it feel rough, Julia?
feel the flesh old with it. Don't.
Yeah, the PA, that PA, when she says "don't," you hear the PA accent in her. Don't. I love it.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah, yeah. Because once we get into 1840, which is where
Yeah,
well, let's see, there's 1995 and there's all that Michigas, which is
Never
kind of,
Without You.
yeah, kind of sort of interesting. Yeah, all that stuff with Gerard. I mean, when she's got the knife and that's pretty heavy stuff. 1840, man, she's really going all over the place for him. And then Angelique shows up. And this Angelique, it was really clever of the writers. It's not the Angelique we've known. It's the Angelique from the original time band,
Right.
from his original life, not the life that Vicky visited. And she doesn't know about pretending to be Cassandra and all of that stuff. The original Angelique visiting the mausoleum every year to make sure he's still chained up.
Hmm.
And she's got it in for Julia. And she says, do I need to be jealous of her? And he's like, no, you don't. She's just a friend.
Yeah,
Well then she's safe.
yeah. That and I have to say that Grayson and Jonathan Frid, of all, except for in the very beginning of the series, he looked great in the very beginning of the. They both looked really good in the 1840 time band. There was a point when they weren't plastering his hair to his head, and she had nice. Her hair looked good, and I thought they're at their apex. This is their best moment visually in the series. So that was a bit of a digression, but
No,
I always
no, no,
noticed
it's
that in the
true. Because
1840 time band.
well, thank God when Frid came back from House of Dark Shadows, he cut his hair
Yeah,
because it's
right.
way too
It was a little
long in
rough.
House of Dark Shadows. It's way
Yeah.
too long.
A
Yeah.
longtime viewer, Carrie Perwicka, who listens to us every single episode we do. I'm really enjoying this.
Hello.
And if no one has said it yet, happy 1 year anniversary for the Dark ShadBros. Always looking forward to another episode. Carrie, thank you for remembering. Thank you,
Thanks,
thank you, thank
Gary.
you.
That's very sweet. Thank you. It's fun. We have fun doing it. We need to keep up with it
Obviously,
more.
right?
Exactly.
Chattering like magpies. The 1840 now, this boasts in the series absolutely one of my favorite scenes, and it's when Angelique buys Barnabas's life by leaping in front of the bullet, and they have that weird that moment in time that nobody's expecting when he has discovered and yet another true love of his life, and Julia comes in the room. Now, mind you, this is after everything you've just seen in the whole series, spending years fighting Angelique and trying to break this curse, and he says to her, Julia, I loved her, and I shall never see her again, and I'll never see that beautiful smile, or whatever he says to her. She kind of like rolls her eyes, like, I. Like, there's a kind of for F's sake moment, and then she kind of does the head thing and kind of walks away. And I'm thinking to myself, if I were her, I don't know if I would have been that cool about it. I think you could read it in her, and I think that was great that she put that in there. That
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, come again. Love her. She's the one for you. All this that I've been doing like a schmuck. You got all these. Oh God, it's my
Well, and the
favorite scene
tee
in the
up,
whole.
because again, she is all bitch when she first shows up, Angelique. She's
Yeah,
giving Julia a hard time. I mean, it's she's giving him a hard time. Someone was saying, earlier, oh, good, she offed Roxanne, and I'm like, what do you, that Angelique can do no wrong,
right.
fan club. God love them, but I'm just like, okay, guys, you're pushing it a little bit here. Um,
She's the series heavy. I mean, we love her, but she's the villain. She's the naughty on the show. The wiki.
she's yeah, yeah. Um, but when push comes to shove, and Angelique realizes that it's Judah Zachary and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. And that great moment, where he storms the old house and out walks Barnabas at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with
I
Angelique.
love that.
Oh,
Yes.
it's so beautifully played. And we find out, yes, she took the curse off, but Julia is having none of it.
Yeah.
Barnabas says She saved us, Julia. And she goes, saved us for what? For what?
I don't give a crap. Rocky, you're a bum.
Burgess Meredith.
Right. No, I love that. That is one of the best. They had some great moments in that last. That is, I love that. It's one of the best, coolest. Yeah.
It's a great moment. It's a really, really great moment. And again, Julia does not. Why would she trust this woman, especially this
No.
Angelique? Because it's not the Angelique that she worked with in 1897.
It's almost like B. Arthur said, I think, once about her character in The Golden Girls. She said, "I'm the one that's always like, wait a minute, come on, let's
The
rally at
anchor.
that. Yeah, let's get this together. Let's think about this real hard for a minute." Julia has to constantly kind of be that. Like she can. It's funny to see her think to herself. You think, do you not see what is going on around you? Every time I turn around, it's the same. And Miss Parker commented on that. She said Barnabas had no idea the bigger picture. He could not get the
Yeah,
bigger picture ever
yeah,
as a character. And it's so true. And screaming at him about it. Don't trust her.
yeah, yeah. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, they walk up the stairway into time, back into the present, and that's it. I mean, and it's interesting that it's Barnabas and Julia who walk off into the camera. That's our
Yeah.
last glimpse into the Collins family that we know.
It's crazy. Wow.
Because Thayer walks off with Joan, and I think Barnabas is pondering about all the others in 1840, and she says, we'll never forget any of them, Barnabas, and they just do that extreme walking into the cat, and that's it. They're gone.
I
Wow.
will not watch that scene. I do not, I don't know why, but I don't like to watch the last episode of any series if the actors were aware that it's the last episode. Lost in Space, nobody knew, so it doesn't feel like a last episode. But things that feel like this is the end, I won't watch the last. Not that that's the last of the show, but for me, it kind of is. It
Have
dies
you
off when Barnabas
Is
takes
that her
over.
last
have you
appearance?
watched hang on, John? Have you watched 1841 Parallel Time though?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you have.
Bits
Okay.
and bobs.
Yeah.
Bits and bobs. Bits and
Yeah.
bobs. Yeah, it's
Because
not
it's
as exciting to me because,
Well, I'll say this: Bromwell. I mean, he is not likable at all. For those of you who love Bromwell,
yeah,
he is not. And now it's the yin and the yang, because you've got him pursuing Catherine, Laura. They did a role reversal there, and he's doing the Angelique bit this time around. What were you going to ask, Hun?
Is it that the last time we see Julia at all?
So last time you see Julia Hoffman, because now we're in 1841 Parallel Time, and it's Julia Collins.
Got it.
So that's it. We never see that was the bad part of the way the show ended, is because it's kind of a spooky, fun story, but you're ending on a family and people that you really don't know and you really don't care about.
right. You're not invested in it at all.
No, no.
Yeah. And isn't it the end of 1841 when Thayer does the conclusion? There was never again a vampire
It's the last
on
episode.
the
That's the last thing we hear is
and
1841 Parallel Time.
and I think to myself that would have been better placed at the end of the series involving Barnabas and Julia, I think. They could have put it there, giving you an idea that this is going to be it for those two. Moving on to the next
Or,
edition.
or if they could have just, well, at that point there was so much bad blood between Curtis and Frid. I mean, we should have had a 2-hour wrap up movie
Right.
with those
Mm,
characters.
Right.
They should have done something. Although I think, and I don't blame Jonathan for being hurt. I know as the years went on, Curtis apparently said I was wrong. I think it was to
yeah,
Mark Dwidziak that he said that. I was wrong, and he kind of lamented. One of the reasons why he reached out for him to play Joshua in the 91 series.
yeah,
But I think
that would have been crazy.
Jonathan couldn't get over it, I think.
Yeah, I think there's something in the name because my guy was like that with a lot of things too. You want to work for Irwin again? No. So I think it's something in the name.
Irwin sounds even worse than Dan Curtis.
Oh, he was a little bit crazy, I think. A little bit touched. Touched.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Irwin Allen, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, there's someone just did a book about him, didn't they? Didn't a big book come out about him?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to take a look. Master of Disaster.
I think,
Earthquake,
yeah.
flood, disaster.
I think there's a big book about Irwin. Now, guys, share with us if you have favorite Barnabas Julia moments. I wonder how many of you feel that they should have wound up together. What would you have liked to have seen if it hadn't ended there? Let's say 1841 parallel time ended and we had come back into the present day. What would you have liked to have seen happen? Do you think they would have? Because that's when I came up with when Barney met Julia. It was can a 200-year-old vampire and his MD be more than just friends, or will the undead thing always get in the way? To which Michael,
What do you think?
what did you, Mrs. Johnson, sitting off to the side, saying, "I'll have what she's having."
I'll have what she's having. Yeah, wig on and all, black wig and all. What do you think? I mean, I don't think so. Now, I do think they would have spent forever together. And I do like the Sam Hall suggested ending that you can listen to on YouTube. I think that's pretty cool. But do you think that they could have developed a romantic thing? And
I think the only way it would have worked is if the show was coming to a close. Let's say it had gone on another 2 or 3 years, and you really, when we were saying this is it, Dark Shadows is over, and maybe if it really was going to come to an end, maybe I say maybe, I don't know. Again,
yeah,
I don't know who the woman would have been, and I know there are people that think it's Angelique, and I don't agree with that either.
I like it was addressed in this, at least Miss Parker's, apparently her frame of mind in her books was no, that they would get together and she would grind on his nerves and he would feel stifled by her, and the relationship took a very strange turn in her books. So I kind of lean toward that. They were more like siblings, I think. There was a deep love and a deep respect between the two of them. But she's very strong-willed, and so is he. And I think,
Yeah,
you know, I don't think
right.
they would have been.
A good friend, just truly a
Hmm.
bestie. They were besties.
Yeah, right, right. He said in what is it, in Night Whispers, Julia is my most trusted confidant, and I've developed a great deal of affection for her, and all of that kind of thing. But he never mentions anything romantic. He says, "My devotion to Josette, I'll never love again." Is the way they kind of ended it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, one of the things that bothers me is people always go after Julia because of Dr. Woodard. Yes, she put the medicine in the hypodermic. Barnabas is the one who actually injected it into him. She's an
Also, he was on his way
accomplice.
out.
Yeah,
She could have done, I mean, he was going to kill him either way. I mean, either way, Barnabas would have seen, Dr. Woodard was going to die. Thank God that actor was. Oof. Anyway,
oh, Peter Turgeon. Oh my God, I'm going. Please,
yeah.
please, Barnabas, jab it, Barnabas.
Ooh. But yeah, no, there was nothing, Julia. And what? That's a harsh situation to be to try and judge somebody on. You've got to. He's already screwing with her in every other way possible, and you know, I I don't think there would have been any choice. I mean, she certainly did the best she could to protect anybody else that she could.
Yeah,
It's not like she just threw her hands up in the air and said, "Well, go ahead, do what you want.
even
I'll
with
be
Maggie.
getting
I
your
mean,
salary."
people talk about, oh, she abused Maggie, and I'm like, not really. She's trying to stay in between the two of them, and like, okay, I have found this creature that I've always wanted to find, someone that bridges the gap between life and death, and try to somehow cure him. And at the same time, I don't want to see this innocent girl die.
Yeah,
So she hypnotizes her, but then again, John will tell you that hypnosis is used to put bad memories at the back of your head. Am I right or am I wrong?
100%. 100% right.
You know, hypnotherapy is so that these things don't stay in your frontal lobe.
Mm. Well, you know, okay, so this is my thing about that whole thing, about Julia and hurting Maggie and all that. You have to decide when you watch. I say there are two types of vampires things: the movies, film, television. There's either the Dark Shadows or the Hammer film. And what I mean by that is you're either going to play it off as a guilt-ridden, you know, not completely bad. There are shades of gray and everything series, and maybe if because then you have to make the vampire hunter a villain, and or you're going to play it like the Hammer film, where it was a very different trajectory. Dracula was the villain. The vampire was an unspeakable evil that had to be wiped out in every Hammer film. You know, so if Julia is going to make the decision that I'm going to protect these people, then she's got to go full on, full frontal Professor Van Helsing and hunt Barnabas. There's no kind of like, and then the series takes a whole nother. The series is about Barnabas, who is the hero, the anti-hero of the series. So he's going to be surrounded by no perfect people in a world shaded in gray. And I mean, it has to be even that way with Quentin. I mean,
Right.
Quentin has killed people, and I mean, Quentin's slightly worse because he wasn't bound by a curse when he was doing half his terrible things to people. He
True.
was, you know, he wasn't a werewolf when he was doing some of the nasty things he was doing. So you have to decide in a vampire series what trajectory you're going to take. Are they bad or are they good? And if they're, or are they in between? You know, you have to have the vampire hunter be the vampire hunter or no.
If
You know,
Jonathan, if Jonathan had been killed off as they planned, it obviously it would have been Dr. Woodard driving the stake through his heart. That's what they were teeing up for. He was going to be the Van Helsing, and then therefore he
right?
had to be sacrificed.
Exactly,
Got it.
exactly. And they were smart to get an actor nobody liked. They were going to kill him because everybody liked the original. Everybody liked Dr. Woodard. It would have been much harder to watch him get killed for me if it had been the original guy because you it would have been a shock. Oh, this guy, you're kind of like, let's do this thing.
He was lovable. Robert Geringer was lovable as Dr. Woodard. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he had the small town doctor feel.
Very much so.
You know.
Very much
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I agree with
Mm.
you on that. So when they go after her for that, I'm like,
Remind the audience why he was replaced.
that was the strike. And we lost Robert Geringer and I believe Dan Elcar as Sheriff Patterson. And oh my God, the
Cemetery
Eagle
keeper.
Hill caretaker, Daniel Keyes. I want a whole story about. Oh my God, I love Daniel Keyes was in that scene between him and Jonathan, where he's just pressing Barnabas's nerves because he wants to know about David. And oh my
Does he call him
God,
old man? Doesn't he say call him old man at one point when he starts to lose it? A kink?
because he recognizes that, you know, I recognize the cane and the ring from the portrait, and you see Barnabas trying to put them behind his cape.
I would love to see a few episodes dedicated to the source of the cane and the ring.
Oh yeah.
You
Totally.
know, I would love to see a whole, you know, a couple episodes about where he had the ring made or saw it, and you know, whether it was Martinique or Europe, and where the cane came from. Because you know, the cane has a story.
I
He
love
tells
that.
the story about how it represents man taming the wild and the you know and all that.
Oh,
I
in
would
the
love to
diner.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
would
he
love to
calls
see him talk
it
about that.
gold.
Silver and gold and very,
And
very
very,
old.
very
Very
old.
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 Yeah.
I love that scene. Yeah. So, and you know what's funny about that is, you know, in the Dark Shadows movies, Depp does the thing about if this were real silver, my hand would burst into flames, which is why they made the cane out of ivory or whatever. And I think they were kind of taking care of that by saying it's a mix of metals in the
Nickel
original
plated.
series.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
silver and gold and very, very old. I think that's why he can hold it because there's gold running through it also.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't bother him. And I don't know why they didn't just leave it like that instead of making an ivory cane. But
And
anyway,
then, you know, the ring. I mean, the thing is that in forget if it's James Hall. I think it might be Johnny Carlin. when they're looking at the portrait of Barnabas, one of the first times, and he points to the ring and says, "Is that a ruby?" And David says, "Yes," because it was black and white. And they didn't know they were going to go into color, and so they were thinking, well, yeah, usually you use black to represent red.
Got it.
So then it became an onyx ring, and onyx
For that reason, I thought it was red.
is used to ward off negativity.
Oh, interesting.
I took my father's graduation ring had a ruby in it, and because of that, what you're talking about, I used to steal his graduation ring and wear it all the time. And my father said, "Son, trust me, it's going to be black. It's going to be black. It's not red." But they said it was a ruby, so I wore it all the time. But yeah, yes.
Because the Dracula ring is red.
Yeah,
The Dracula
it
ring
had
is
red
red.
like underlay. Yep.
Yeah, under the crest.
It's a genuine signet ring. Yeah, on the. And I heard Lugosi actually sent it to Christopher Lee or something like that, or Christopher Lee actually got the Lugosi ring.
He had the
some
Lugosi
point.
ring. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I've
that's
got to
pretty
send
cool.
it to you. I'll send it after this. There's a great close up of Jonathan. The camera pans in, and it goes to pick up cufflinks of somebody's, and I have the photo, and then I blew it up so you could see the shank on it. It's another good side view of the ring, and I'm like, oh, Michael will appreciate that.
Did you guys ever see, for the fans who are listening and watching, there's a whole thing on YouTube, a video it's called Dark Shadows, and I think it's just called Hands. And it's just tight shots of Jonathan Frid's hands. It's really wild.
Interesting.
It's really him picking up boxes and him folding his hands and him doing different, because honestly, you do, his hands were so large, and he was very gesticulate with his hands. You do focus on the hands a lot of times with him.
Gary said Jonathan said once that his ring was painted glass.
What I was
I heard it
told
was cheap.
from that it came from Woolworths. These were from people who worked with Jonathan at the festivals, and they got it at the costume jewelry counter at Woolworths, and that he would lose them or they would break, and so they would have to go get another one. Michael and I noticed early on versus midway, the shank changed. It was kind of solid with a bit of etching in it. And then it's now there was a picture I'm going to send you, and we've talked about this before. It's 3 bands that meld into one. But again, these folks who worked with him said they would run out of the black ones and they would have a green one. So they would take one of the green ones and they would just paint it black.
Oh, how funny.
Because they ran out of the onyx ones. So that's what this Woolworths.
It's crazy to think that, because when we were growing up watching this show, that ring was a solid onyx, solid gold. Even the prop in your head, they probably had that manufactured for the series, and that wolf head cane had to be manufactured for the series, just like the Wolfman. And it really was probably quite heavy. And then they're all over the place in this, pharmaceuticals and stuff, and the Woolworths, and even when you're engaged in theater and how it works, how they're not going to pay all that money enough, something like they're too busy paying the actor or paying for the set or whatever. You still in your head think that, on that series, that jewelry chest is real and that Barnabas's ring is real. It's crazy.
When we watched
it's like a hypnosis.
when we watched the NBC series to review it, and it's the scene where Barnabas reveals the bullet, the ball, and I had never noticed it before, and I said, John, go back. His ring was a costume jewelry ring. It has the 2 ends that meet to adjust the size, and I was like, holy crap! I'm like, they even cheaped out on that ring, man.
Right, of all the times to cheap out on something where the camera gets really close in.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, it's one of those, very much like a mood ring, Terry. Yes, very much, which they were popular.
If you look at that ring changed too. In the movie, or the first episode or two, it was just a plain silver thick shank with the beads around it. Then it got that really interesting wide, adjustable one size fits all.
Totally. And I wonder, because remember, the show wasn't, they did the movie and then they didn't pick it up. And even Collinwood, Collinwood, I don't know if it's this, the Collinwood set, guys, for if you watch the NBC show, that's not Greystone. Collinwood, the Great Hall, is a mock-up of Highclere Castle, which you know very well from Downton Abbey. They copied the Downton Abbey drawing room, front hallway, foyer, to the letter. The staircase, the archways at the top, that was all a set. And apparently, what I heard was when they scrapped the show after the pilot, it was destroyed and they had to go back and rebuild the whole thing all over again. And that it's one of the most expensive sets ever built for a pilot, ever, in TV history.
Wow. Holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
More proof that they should. Downton Abbey is more proof that that a period series would be very successful for Dark Shadows. And I would love to see them do something with the 20s and 30s.
Yes. 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 Downton, Bridgerton, there's another one out there. And those are period pieces. I mean, this is going back to the 1700s and the 1800s, and even way before the turn of the century. So all the more reason why Dark Shadows can work now. And as Marie Wallace pointed out to me at dinner several years ago, now it's a costume piece within a costume piece. And particularly for those watching the show now for the first time, those outfits are costumes. Even though 60s fashions come back, still the makeup, the hair, the false eyelashes, the blue eyeshadow, the style of the men's jackets, so it would work even more on, we were in 1966 and now we're in 1795. That costume designer.
Julia, she wore some rings. Julia had a ring on every finger, and she had scarves all the time and pins. She wore more jewelry than the mistress of Collinwood.
Yes. Yeah.
Joan Bennett would have a necklace or something, one ring on or something, nothing great, but Grayson would have a big ring on every finger, as Magda or Julia.
It's funny, we talk about how, the costume jewelry back then, because I collect a lot of it several of the people that I pay tribute to. Judy had on her left hand, she wore an onyx dome ring, and very, very particular setting. And someone gifted me one because they knew I was looking for it. And then I found one. And the one thing I've noticed about those rings is how they hold up. Anything that was made in the 50s and 60s, if you buy costume jewelry from that period, it was made to last. Right. If you buy costume jewelry now, you're lucky if you get 3 months out of it.
It was the era of like the cocktail ring.
Yes.
Women would have cluster rings and wear rings to different parties. And I mean, Grayson was the best example of that. But you're right. It was a whole different.
Gary Swafford writes, I think that since they had such great chemistry and both were from the stage, wouldn't it have been great if Grayson and Jonathan had worked in a play together? Could you imagine them in the Scottish play?
Oh
boy. I don't know. I mean, the wish every Dark Shadows fan had was when we had Return to Mayberry and all of these things were happening in the early 80s, is why didn't they? And at that point, Dan Curtis wanted nothing to do with Dark Shadows. Mm-hmm. That's when they should have done a reunion movie.
100%.
I have my own ideas about that. And I have my ideas about if it had been done after 1985, 86, 87, who the replacements would have been, because they would have had to have replaced Grayson and they would have had to have replaced Thayer. And we'll talk about that at another time. I have my own ideas as to who the actors would have been that would have taken over for them. I don't know
because they were dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because Grayson, and then we lost Joel. I don't know if Joe Haskell would have been a part of the storyline or not if they had done a reunion movie. They would have had to have found another person to play Joe Haskell. But I don't know if Grayson and Jonathan ever would have worked together again. I think he was a gentleman when she passed away. He did say lovely things about her over the years, but I don't know if they ever could have worked together. I mean, it was suggested that somebody do a play with Jonathan and um, Louis, and they begged off, and the person said, I love them dearly, but I don't know that I want to do a stage show with them because I'd have to remember all the lines.
Oh, right, right.
Well, actually,
I'll leave it there. I know I won't go any further than that.
Jonathan and Marie Wallace were approached to do a play together, and Jonathan begged off to direct it instead of being in it.
Well, Lion in Winter. He directed her in Lion in
And
Winter.
then they chose Lion in Winter as the project.
Yeah.
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 She
I
played
know there's a
Eleanor of
story about.
Aquitaine.
I think he played in the Scottish. I think he played Macbeth, and that Louis went to see him, and that at some point he came out on the stage and did a whole different Shakespearean play. Somehow saved it and walked off. But Louis Edmonds was like, "That's a different play altogether." So
Did he come out? He came
Shakespeare
and said, "Hail Caesar."
in the middle of Macbeth.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he said, "Hail Caesar."
Phil
He did have that
asks,
gravitas.
if Dark Shadows remade, what estate should be used? Or a new one?
Used the old
Well.
What estate should be used? Well, they shouldn't use Lyndhurst.
They should not use Linter.
Use Lyndhurst.
Lockwood Matthews would be a perfectly fine estate in
Well,
Connecticut.
no, I think that we all want Seaview, and I think that even I mean, in this day and
That's
age,
what I
they
think.
could do.
Seaview Terrace, we agree.
It's got to be Seaview. It's got to be Seaview.
Yeah.
It's got to look like the Collinwood that we know. Mark Perry is pushing
Yeah.
for that with his sequel series. I think that first of all, Lyndhurst is so cold. That's why it works for the movie, because it's a hammer. It's a castle.
Yeah.
It's a
I agree
castle,
with
and
you.
it's
Not
got that.
Lyndhurst.
Yeah,
No. It doesn't feel. We are all used to one. It's again. We've had this chat about. It's like the Enterprise. You can change a little bit, but it's got to be the shape. It's got to have the shape of the
Right.
Enterprise. It's a member of the cast. And the old house. I mean, you'd have to find. I would hope they would find another Greek revival colonial that, or even just use stills of the old house that they had originally,
Yeah,
or
good
something.
point.
You know.
there's two. If they want the old house, what they could use is they're still in L.A. You can either use the governor's mansion from Benson. It has the same
Right.
portico, and then you could blue screen the other columns on the side.
Good idea.
There is the Fresh Prince of Bel Air house. They could have used either one of those houses for the NBC series, just for the exterior shots. And
Right.
those houses still exist. So those would be my choices if they're filming in LA. Use either the governor's mansion, which is in Pasadena, or the Fresh Prince of Bel Air house, which is somewhere in Beverly Hills,
Yeah.
because they bear
I
a
mean,
resemblance.
for that matter, I mean, they could AI the old house. And I mean, we were never actually inside the old house anyway. We were always in a set or at the front door of the old house anyway. So you could just AI, and I would love to see if they do it, speaking on the houses, I would love to see more. I mean, Collinwood and the old house had miles of tunnels, apparently, that led to the beach and to all of these other places. I would love to see some of that, perhaps even a tunnel that led to Eagle Hill. I would love to see that, gain Barnabas quick ingress and, that kind of thing.
A little piece of trivia: there was a place called Thornfield Hall in Thompson, Connecticut, and in their literature, they claim to be the old house from Dark Shadows.
Oh, interesting.
They're not. They have a portico and columns, but if you look at it, and it's still there, you can go visit it. But it was not the old house. Spratt Mansion, which was on the Lyndhurst property, was the old house, and it burned down in
Burned, right?
1968. Yeah. But Thornfield Hall bears a very striking resemblance to Spratt House to a degree. And they've been. I think they still use that. They may very well still use that in their brochure. It was the house on Dark Shadows, but it's not. It's called Thornfield Hall, and it's in Thompson, Connecticut. You can visit it. Yeah. Yeah.
A couple things I'd love for them to stick to: the coffin, the design for the coffin.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that stay. Um, let's see. The old house, of course, the cane. I don't think they should screw, and I've said this 1,000 times: no cape, no ring, no cane, no Barnabas.
Yeah.
Andrew
He's a
Connor,
man of a different era.
Andrew O'Connor, it's good to see you. What happened to the sets of Dark Shadows?
So I think several things happened to the sets, Andrew. Some of them, and people have posted photos, did wind up on other soap operas. A lot of people were under the belief that they were destroyed immediately after Dark Shadows. In fact, one fan, I believe, oh God, his name was Walter. He was a studio kid, and I think they were directed to a dump lot, and by the time they got there, the person said, "Oh, whatever we had was already destroyed." But a lot of the pieces stayed in storage, and I believe the Collins Mausoleum you could see on One Life to Live at one point. The stained glass window from the top of the foyer. Um, Things wound up on Ryan's Hope, which was in the same studio as Dark Shadows. So they you would find them. They would show up doorways, things and fans will occasionally put photos up on Facebook in various groups. So they were not just all thrown away; they were repurposed. They were repurposed.
Right.
Whatever, we don't know what happened to Barnabas's coffin. You know, that was made for Jonathan Frid, and they got the measurements just a hair off, and it was just a hair too small for him.
So he had to scooch his legs.
Yeah. He said I would have to bend my knees, until the lid was open, and then I would straighten myself out because, and you can see that coffin took quite a beating over time. You see a lot of scratch
Oh,
marks on the top of it, but that was designed especially for Barnabas.
I love that stuff, and some of the props on the set, like Barnabas's secretary. I always thought that was great. He
Yeah.
said be sitting there writing a letter or something like that. I thought that was the secretary was really cool. The
Yep.
chair that he had, the harp chair in the old house,
Yep.
the big U that he would sit in sometimes. I used to like that a lot too. And they have to put a nice big high back red chair if they do the house. A high back red chair would be nice to see too.
And then it was funny. John noticed it the other day for the first time. We go back to 1795, and everything is like peach, right? Everything is
Right.
done in a
Oh
kind of
yeah.
a peach. And then, of
Almost
course,
like an 80s peach.
right? Exactly. We come back into the present, and it's exactly the way it was in 1795. I'm sure Cy probably said, "Well, Dan, we need to go back to typical Dan Curtis. They'll never remember. They don't care. They're looking at the story. They're not watching that." But
The old house kind of matched Barnabas's cheeks when they first went back. They were heavy on the rouge the first couple episodes with Jonathan Frid when they went back in time.
and it's funny when you first see him in 1795, half of that eye makeup is gone, so he looks younger.
Oh yeah, without the need of the rouge. The
Yeah, I
rouge.
mean, not that they just did a little bit of eyeliner, and that once he becomes a vampire, all of a sudden everything the grease paint really gets added.
Highlights the wrinkles.
Yes, yes. But I thought there was something like. I remember the first time I was like, "Damn!" I'm like, "Wow, he really does look like a younger guy now."
Oh yeah. The same when they would let his hair loose a little bit, and without the hairspray all over it. He looked so much different when his hair was relaxed. And same with Grayson. When her hair was, it would DH her like when they like in the film, the first one, and the 1841. Her hair looked great. She looked younger.
And I noticed as she's transitioning, getting into House of Dark Shadows, and she's starting to let the hair grow out because as
Yeah,
Hoffman for a while, and even as Julia before they got, I'm like, she's got a Q-tip head. It's like an orange.
redhead.
It's almost like an orange Q-tip. It's it's it's
Right.
it's so frizzy, and like you could tell she's trying to let it grow out. And it's so in House of Dark Shadows, she's given it a nice clean coat of dark auburn, and she's doing the very kind of, Lamar would say, dégagé type thing. It's all kind of messy, but it's clean messy, windswept.
Right.
Phil asks, what happened to the
Windswept.
original Josette portrait?
Josette's portrait, we don't
Oh,
know.
there were two, right?
There was the one for the movie, which Catherine I understand, allegedly was not happy about. And if you look at the Naomi portrait, you could understand why. Uh, Whoever they got did very primitive, and you don't see Josette's portrait in the movie in close up. You only see it
Hmm.
at an angle. Even when Professor Stokes opens the doors, they don't zoom in on it. And I think it's because Catherine
Yeah.
was not she was not thrilled with the way the portrait turned out.
I know Naomi had a neck about 16 inches long. It
Yeah,
almost looked like they put Joan Bennett's face over another portrait.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Or maybe they had someone sit for it and then they painted Joan's face in.
Right, right.
Because for the series, what they had to do was around parallel, just before parallel time, they went out for the night. They came back to work the next day. For those of you guys who don't know this out there, and they walked in and they looked at the foyer set and they said, "That looks funny." Someone came in and perfectly razor bladed Barnabas's portrait out of its frame. It was gone,
it's amazing.
and no security cameras in those days.
Wow.
So now match the two portraits. When you put the original portrait next to the one that I believe David and Amy find in parallel time, it's all different colors. It's heavier grease paints. It's more vibrant. And they obviously used a picture of Jonathan posing. Essentially, this, and then they put a little gold plaque on the bottom of it, which I think says Barnabas Collins.
Got it.
Yeah.
That wasn't on the original portrait either.
Interesting.
And then they had yet another portrait made, I think a little bit bigger, for House of Dark Shadows. And the House of Dark Shadows one is the one that toured around to conventions. You could take your photo with it. And then they auctioned that off. And I don't know what happened to the one that was done for the series. Jonathan did not keep it.
The one with that he had Sam Evans paint. That's the one I always liked.
His modern day portrait. And we don't know what happened to
Yeah,
that one either.
I thought that was a great. No, I thought it was great. I would have kept that if I were him.
Angel Heart Collins asks, what happened to the grandfather clock?
It would have
Ooh,
been repurposed, Angel Heart. Any of that stuff would have been repurposed. The only thing we know for sure is that Jonathan kept his fangs and his cane. Michael Stroka admitted that he stole Josette's music box for a fan that he was dating. So we don't know whatever happened beyond that, where the music box went. Another thing that allegedly came from a Woolworths. So there's a lot of stuff. They had Angelique's old age portrait, I believe, was auctioned off, as well as her modern day portrait was auctioned off. Um, there were several things. The maternity dress that Diana Malay wore, which Cassandra later wears, it's black velvet with a lot of white frills on it. They actually had that, and Diana modeled it in 1993 or 1995.
She still fit into it?
She still fit into it,
Wow.
and you went out of her way to mention, I was about 7 months pregnant when I wore this dress, and our friend Eileen Lynch Ferrara, without missing a beat, says, if she goes into labor now, I'm out of here.
yeah. Now the question about the clock is, 100 years from now, let's say it's sitting on a set and somebody opens it up, are they going to find Julia's diary in there?
her, her
How
notebook,
I did it,
right?
Victor Frankenstein.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah, you wonder what happened to all of that stuff, and you wonder how many people walked off with things. Again, I'll bring it back to the Little House cast. Allison Arngrim always says, we didn't know at the time this stuff was going to be worth anything. So
Right.
she's like, I would have taken my wig. So we're still trying to find my wig. We know it's somewhere. We don't know where, but we know it's somewhere. But we didn't think in those terms. And unless you were really sentimental, you didn't keep anything. And if you asked, you were told no. Like Don Briscoe wanted his vampire fangs, and they said no. What the hell were they going to do with them? No, they were the custom made. Nobody else could wear
Right.
them.
Right. My question to you is, how many mob hip people have you talked to about getting that box back from Michael Stroko's ex girlfriend?
Right?
I would
I
love
know
to
you're
know.
I know you're hunting that thing down.
Well, we all want that's we got the ring and the cane, and everybody wants a to scale Josette's music box, and
Right.
MPI refuses to do it.
That
When
makes no
people,
sense to me.
well, yeah, because
You want to sell it or not?
people are spending $500 to $600 on the dinky little plastic one. Do a limited edition, and people have said we'll pay $250 whatever for it, but just do a limit. That's what they did with the canes, and they sold out of the
Yeah.
canes twice.
Yeah.
Bob brings up something interesting. I love the hospital scene in 68 when Cassandra was alone with Sam in the hospital with his glasses on being blind. What's part of the reason for the glasses?
That's been exaggerated. That's been
Poor Sam.
exaggerated. Poor Sam. That comes from the Frankenstein story because what happens? I don't know if it's in the book.
The
It's
blind man.
the blind man.
The blind bride. Yeah, the
That's
bride, is it?
and
Rawr.
although it's been said that, and we know there's even the blooper of him looking at his script. I think by that point, David Ford was over it and didn't really care anymore. So at least, those glasses, he could look at the teleprompter more.
Exactly.
He cheated more.
I was gonna
So,
make espresso. How about I was gonna make espresso?
Gene Hackman,
Didn't
classic.
Wasn't there a story that Catherine Lee Scott tells about I don't know if he wasn't paying attention or something like that, and he jumped up and said, "Oh, where was it?" She said, "It's time to go, Dad," or something along those lines.
The
Go,
final,
go into
the
the
final,
light.
yeah,
Yeah.
the final scene, and she said, that somehow the cameras got crossed, and they knocked the teleprompter over, and he sat bolt right up in bed and said, "Where is it? Where is it?" And Maggie just pushes him against the pillows and says, "It's okay, Pop," and he dies. I got to go back and watch that scene. It's been a while because you know very very well the Adam storyline is not one of my favorites.
It's a little painful.
We,
I like it better now as a kid than I did as a kid, though.
I'll give it a third try. I'll see if third time's the charm. I can't believe it. We made it to the 2 hour mark, guys. 2 hours of us waxing
And could go
poetic.
on.
Oh yeah, we could go on forever with this. So
Yeah.
we'll be back. We will be back. We want to thank you guys for tuning in, and remember, hit like and subscribe on YouTube.
Like and subscribe, people.
Like Dark ShadBros on Facebook. Be sure to check out Michael Penzerato in the Dabbler on YouTube. And I don't know what our next topic is going to be. We're still working on our favorite writers, favorite episodes episode. Not quite there yet. So we'll see. And if you have suggestions
Ideas, yeah.
and ideas,
Please let us know.
send them our way. Please send them our way.
Send us a private note. Put them in the comments here, whatever. We would love to hear what you would like us to discuss.
Thank you, Michael Penzerato.
Michael.
Thank you, DJ.
You guys.
You're welcome.
Thank all of you, and continue to stay in the shadows. I was hoping you'd make an appearance, kiddo.